So let's keep on modeling our prototype game asset. In our last lesson, we brought in the reference image, added a little bit of cavity under these settings, and we also opened up our fluent panel by just pressing the N panel and clicking on these, and then we made a few changes to our reference image where we set the opacity and we rotated this guy. So in this lesson, what we're going to do is to begin to use incremental saves and start fleshing out this object. So I'm just going to go to File and go to Save As, and I'll just call this 0, 2. So let's just click Save As. So that means we can use incremental saves to step back into a time frame in case we want to change some things. So the first thing I'll do is just click on this, and let's click on Cut Add, and I'll right click here at the center just to have this image. Now this plane is actually lying flat. We want it to kind of like be vertical like our object, so we can just see through this. And to fix that, what we can do is to click on this rotation, and let's think about which axis we want to rotate. So it could be, now it's not X. Just go over here and just click once to validate that. Let's click on X. No, it's not. So this is ZX. I believe this is Y. So let's click on Y and let's rotate that till we get to a value of 90 and click, and then validate that. So that way we can actually see that we have this object kind of like facing us like this, so we can just look at our game. So what I also like to do is just bring this a little bit lower and closer. So I'll just right click anywhere and I'll delete this guy. So I'll just I'll press Z to make sure it's aligned. I'll just bring it a bit closer like here, and I'll also lower this guy. Sorry about that, guys. So I'll just make this super flat so I can see this. So I'll deselect that. I'll go to Cut Add and I'll right click. So now we can see it's super close and it's nice. And we can also move the selector. If I select Y, you can see I can also drag this as well. So I don't even need to move the reference image. And whenever I'm happy, I just click once and then click the center to validate. So these are two ways you can actually move this object around. So let's start by getting this base shape. So here I'm on the rectangle. I might want to add a few of these points, because if I click here and use this as a guide, you know, I just want to have that point there. To reset, I'll just press R. I'll press and hold V, and what I can do is just drag to the right to add some of these details. So hold V, drag to the right to add more points, so we can actually have the flexibility to add more of these shapes. So I'll just click over here. It doesn't have to be perfectly aligned, and I'll just leave this object like so. So if I drag left and right, I'll set a thickness. I can hold down the middle mouse button so I can see what thickness I want to set for this. So I believe this thickness is fine. So I'll just leave it at that and click on Validate. So next I want to add a little bevel to these edges. So I'll right click, move over to the first bevel, and we can actually see that if I start dragging this, it's beveling everything, which is not what we want. We just want to start with a single edge. So the first thing we're going to do is to press X to deselect everything. So now you can see that it's not working. I just use X to deselect all the vertices, and we can see the shortcut here that says vertex selection X. So I'll just go over here to this edge and I'll press X. Now if I drag, I'm only dragging out this edge, so we can actually see this. And also what I like to do is to turn on the X-ray mode so we can see through this guy. So to do that, I'll just click here and click the vertex shading so we don't have any shading, and this is our X-ray. So I've toggled X-ray, and I also like to turn on the wireframe. So yep, let's see, let's get rid of X-ray first like so, and let's click on this and say wireframe so we can see the wireframe even though we've not selected the model. So let's go ahead and click on this guy to toggle X-ray so we can see through the object like that. So to edit, when you start, kind of like clicking, click on the object and go to edit. Now we're actually back in that spot where we can select our vertices. So I've selected the first bevel. I'll just click on this guy and shift it and bring it right here and press X on this edge, and let's add a slight bevel here because it looks super sharp. I don't want it to be naturally like sharp all through, and that's great. So I'll just press X to deselect that, and then here has the most curves. This edge here is the most curved object. So I'll press X and I'll just drag this like so, like that. And then finally this edge, even though it's sharp, bevels really help capture that edge. So I'll make sure I'm here. Okay, let me just re-edit that. Go to edit, go over to the edge, press X, right click, go to first bevel, press X to add this, deselect all on this edge only. I'll just press X and I'll just have a nice bevel around here. So we've created this bevel on this object and it's not really looking super bad. What I like to do is just reduce the thickness because it's super thick. To do that, we just right click and let's toggle the X-ray mode, select the object, head over to scale, and let's scale this along the X-axis like so. So it's a very thin device, and there you have it. So in this, we're actually going to stop here because I don't want this to be super long. So in this section, what we actually succeeded in doing is seeing how we can create a grid. For instance, if I go to the Fluent object and go to creation and right click, we saw how we could create a grid. We saw how we could rotate a grid by selecting the axes we want to rotate and dragging it left or right to rotate along an axis. This will help us align to our reference image. We also saw how we could create shapes by creating a rectangle on the grid. Let's validate this and create a rectangle on the grid. We also saw how we could reset by pressing R. So we also saw how we could create, click, and we could just extrude. And we saw how we could kind of like bevel edges by right clicking and going to the first bevel and beveling the object like so. Right, so in our next lesson, we're going to start creating our little screen elements. Let's click on this and kind of hide this. So we're going to learn how to create the little screen over here and then add another screen, this little dent, because this seems to be like pushed in. We'll learn to do that in our next lesson. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you there.